What are we expecting, Larry? First off, what are we expecting from, because obviously anything that Senate Democrats in terms of gun control that they're going to present in the Senate, it's not going to make it through the Senate. It's not going to make it through the House. It's going to be defeated. So that leaves the president, who has suggested that if such measures would fail, he would take executive action. But what would he take executive action on exactly? What are we expecting here?
Well, we're hearing that he might be thinking of expanding the background check so that if I give a gun to one of my children, we would have to travel wherever we can find the nearest federally licensed firearms dealer,
right,
and run the transaction through him, thus creating a paper trail that in effect is a part of a national gun registry. And I'll tell you right now, and I've said this already publicly, if the president does something like that, I am not obeying.
Is there also the threat, too, that because I know that they had hinted around that they were thinking about redefining, and then of course, they left it completely open, redefining who is or who is not a dealer. And because right now the ATF already handles that. The ATF says, okay, well, if you're involved in X many sales, if this is part of your livelihood and you sell firearms, you're a dealer. We're not giving licenses out for personal use or occasional sales. But the president has hinted about modifying that. And my fear, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this, is that then, by doing that, he would de facto make every person, or could make every person, all he would have to do is say, well, one firearm a year, and that makes you a dealer. Well, then that makes us all federally licensed firearms dealers, and there's your gun registry.
That would certainly do it. And one step short of that would simply be to nail people that are selling off a collection. They need the money. They're not buying and selling. They're just selling an asset. And if they were to sell a car, it wouldn't be any business of the federal government. Certainly, it should be even less the business of the federal government to sell a constitutionally protected item, right, which has surrounding it shall not be infringed. I realize that's just kind of getting picky with our president.
Right. Well, they have been blaming all of, like, for instance, Indiana was taking a lot of heat last week because they were saying, well, Larry, they were saying, oh, well, Chicago has that high crime rate because of Indiana's gun laws. Well, then my question was, well, are we just not hearing about Indiana's crime rate? Wouldn't Indiana's crime rate be really high?
Thank you. Are you the only logical person in the media? That is the question that has begged being asked, and thank you for asking it. Yeah, and all these other states that are the lower crime states that are supposedly feeding not only Chicago, but New York or San Francisco. Come on, guys, you can't have it both ways.
Right.
If these guns are so inherently dangerous, why don't they look for people to kill in Virginia, right, or in Indiana?
Yeah, they just get shootier, I guess, when they send them to Chicago. I don't know.
They must be sentient beings. They really do have a mind of their own.
Right.
Who would have thought?
So if the president goes through, when the Senate fails, not if, but when the Senate fails, and the president says, well, see, this is a bug, not a feature of the system, and he decides to act and take his phone and his pen and make an executive action, what is our recourse? Like, what are we going to be able to do to push back against that?
Well, I would like to drive to Richmond, stand in front of the federal building, and have a number of people with me, and we'll do what they did up in Washington State. We will exchange firearms right under their noses. Come and take them. That is going to be the opening salvo. And then we're going to continue campaigning to see if any of these politicians support this kind of lawlessness on the part of the president. This has got to be stopped. They have a tool. They can do defunding, which they should be doing, of any of these enforcement activities on the part of the president that are so illegal. And of course, I realize this is to use a four-letter word in Washington, they could impeach the guy.